Chapter 2. The Vanishing Glass. Nearly 10 years ago had passed since the night when the infant Harry Potter was left on the Dursleys' doorstep. Privet Drive, however, had hardly changed. The gardens were still neat, the brass number 4 on the Dursleys' front door still gleaming, and their living room looked almost exactly as it had a decade earlier. The only difference was the collection of family photos that now lined the mantelpiece. Instead of pictures of a pudgy baby in funny hats, the frames now displayed Dudley Dursley growing up, riding his first bike, visiting a fairground, playing video games with his father, and receiving hugs from his adoring mother. In all of these pictures, one boy was missing. There was no sign at all that another child, Harry, lived in the house. Early one morning, Harry was jolted awake by the sharp knocking of his aunt on the cupboard. Up, get up, now, she shrieked. Still half asleep, Harry tried to remember the dream he had been having. It was a pleasant dream about a flying motorbike, an image that felt oddly familiar, as though he had dreamt it before. His aunt called again, demanding that he get moving and watch the bacon, since it was Dudley's birthday and everything had to be perfect. Groaning, Harry dressed in Dudley's oversized hand me downs and came into the kitchen. The table was covered with Dudley's birthday presents: a new computer, a second television, a racing bike, and piles of other expensive gifts. Dudley, though spoiled and overweight, was never satisfied. He whined about the number of presents he had received, throwing a tantrum until Aunt Pentuna promised him two more gifts to make up the difference. Harry, meanwhile, had to cook the breakfast and stay out of the way. Uncle Vernon barked at him to comb his messy hair, though Harry knew from experience that haircuts never worked. His thick black hair always grew back, just as untidy. Dudley entered the kitchen with his mother beaming over his presence. He looked a great deal like Uncle Vernon, with a round pink face and small watery eyes. Aunt Pentuna liked to call him her angel, but to Harry, Dudley looked far more like a pig in a wig. During breakfast, the telephone rang. Aunt Pentuna returned with bad news. Mrs. Fig, the old neighbor, who usually babysat Harry on Dudley's birthday, had broken her leg. That meant there was no one to watch Harry while the Dursleys took Dudley out for his celebration. Dudley was horrified at the idea of Harry coming along, and Harry himself secretly felt excited. This might be his chance to escape his cupboard for the day. The Dursleys argued about what to do. Uncle Vernon suggested calling his sister, Marge, but Aunt Pentuna reminded him that Marge hated Harry. They thought about asking a friend, Yon, but she was away on holiday. Harry timidly suggested they could just leave him at home. which made Aunt Pentuna look as though she had swallowed a lemon. They dismissed the idea immediately, convinced Harry would cause trouble if left alone. Finally, Aunt Pentuna grudgingly suggested they might take Harry with them to the zoo, but only if he promised to behave. Dudley threw himself into a dramatic fit, pretending to cry and insisting that Harry would spoil everything. But before the tantrum could escalate, the doorbell rang. Dudley's best friend, Pierce Policus, had arrived with his mother, and Dudley immediately stopped, crying to greet him. Half an hour later, Harry found himself sitting in the back of the car, beside Dudley and Pierce. It was a rare treat. He had never been to the zoo before. Uncle Vernon leaned close to him before they left and growled a warning. Any funny business, anything at all, and you'll be locked in that cupboard until Christmas. Harry protested that he never meant for strange things to happen, but the Dursleys never believed him. In truth, odd things did happen around Harry. His hair once grew back overnight after a disastrous haircut from Aunt Pentuna. A jumper of Dudley's had shrunk impossibly small when Aunt Pentuna tried to force it over Harry's head, and one forgettable day, Dudley's gang had chased him at school, and he somehow ended up on the kitchen roof, even though all he had tried to do was jump behind the bins. The car ride to the zoo began peacefully enough. Uncle Vernon rambled about his usual topics, grumblings about traffic, the council, the bank, and young troublemakers. When Harry casually mentioned that he had dreamt of a flying motorbike, Uncle Vernon nearly crashed the car. Motorbikes don't fly, he roared, his face purple with fury. Harry quickly insisted he knew that, though inside he couldn't shake the strange feeling that maybe somehow motorbikes could fly. It was a sunny Saturday, and the zoo was crowded with families. At the entrance, Dudley and Pierce each got large chocolate ice cream. The Dursleys tried to hurry Harry along, but the woman at the stand asked him what he wanted. Embarrassed, Aunt Pentuna bought him a cheap lemon ice lolly. Harry didn't mind, it was still a treat. Inside the zoo, Harry had one of the best mornings he could remember. He walked slightly apart from the Dursleys, enjoying the animals without having to listen to Dudley and Pierce too closely. The boys quickly grew bored and began looking for trouble. But Harry kept his distance. They had lunch at the zoo restaurant, where Dudley threw a tantrum over the size of his ice cream sundae. Uncle Vernon, desperate to keep the peace, bought him another. Harry was quietly given the remainings of the first one, which felt like a secret victory. After lunch, they entered the reptile house. It was cool and dimly lit, with large tanks of lizards and snakes. Dudley and Pierce wanted to see the biggest, scariest snake. They crowded around a glass case containing a massive boa constrictor. The snake was coiled up, motionless, and looked half asleep. Dudley pressed his nose to the glass, whining for it to move. Uncle Vernon tapped on the glass, but the snake ignored him. Disappointed, Dudley turned away. Harry stepped closer, gazing at the creature with sympathy. To his surprise, the snake opened its eye and looked directly at him. Slowly, it raised its head to Harry's level and winked. Shocked, Harry glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice. He leaned closer and whispered through the glass. The snake nodded and gestured towards the sign on its tank. Harry read aloud: Boa constrictor Brazil, bred in the zoo. He realized the snake had never known freedom. Harry murmured that it must be frustrating. The snake responded with another nod, clearly understanding him. For the first time, Harry felt a strange connection. Just then, Dudley noticed Harry's interest. With a shove, he knocked Harry aside and pressed his face to the glass. Pierce leaned in. Suddenly, the glass vanished. Both boys stumbled back, shrieking as the enormous snake uncoiled itself and slithered onto the floor. Screams erupted throughout the reptile house. As visitors fled, Harry sat on the ground. Stunned, the snake slid past him, whispering in a low hiss that only he seemed to hear. Brazil, here I come. Thanks, amigo. Then it was gone, leaving chaos behind. The reptile house keepers were horrified, unable to explain how the glass had disappeared. The zoo director himself apologized to the Dursleys, offering Aunt Pentona a cup of tea. Dudley and Pierce exaggerated the story, claiming the snake had nearly attacked them. Harry, though inwardly amused, stayed quiet back in the car. Pierce accused Harry of talking to the snake. This sealed Harry's fate. Once Pierce was safely dropped off, Uncle Vernon's rage boiled over. He yelled at Harry all the way home. Furious about the trick that evening, Harry was locked back in his cupboard. Punished as always, he lay awake in the dark, wishing he had a time passed slowly in the cupboard, and he waited until the Dursleys went to bed before daring to sneak out for food. As he lay there, Harry thought about his life. Nearly 10 years with the Dursleys had taught him loneliness, hunger, and cruelty. He had never felt allowed or wanted, and the cupboard symbolized everything about his place in their home, hidden, unwanted, forgotten. Yet Harry knew there was something unusual about him. Strange things happened when he was scared or angry. His hair grew back overnight, jumper shrank, and somehow he ended up on rooftops. He could never explain these things, and the Dursleys never listened. They punished him, instead, treating him like a nuisance. Still deep inside, Harry felt certain that these events meant something, that there was more to him than the boy the Dursleys tried to make invisible. Sometimes, when Harry closed his eyes and concentrated, he remembered flashes of something from long ago. He could not remember his parents clearly, only the story the Dursleys had told him, that they died in a car crash. But in his dreams, and sometimes when he tried very hard to recall, he saw a blinding green flash and felt searing pain in his forehead, right where his lightning shaped scar was. The Dursleys hated when he asked questions, so he kept these thoughts to himself. Harry had also noticed peculiar people in the streets. Once a tiny man in a violet hat had bowed to him. Another time, a woman dressed in green had waved at him on a bus. A bald man in a long purple coat had even shaken his hand. Strangest of all, these people always disappeared the moment Harry looked twice. Though he was confused, a small part of him hoped they meant something more, perhaps that his life was not always destined to be miserable. For now, though he remained the lonely boy in the cupboard, waiting for a change he could not yet imagine.